Hello and welcome to her revenge arc. My name is Alara, and tonight I want to tell you a story. It's a story about love, or what I thought was love, and the digital ghosts that sometimes haunt us long after the living have departed from our lives. It's a story about violation, and the quiet, meticulous reclamation of one's own narrative. Settle in, and let the silence of your room be the canvas upon which I paint these events. This is not a story told in anger, for anger is a fire that consumes itself. This is a story told from the quiet shores of its aftermath, a chronicle of a lesson learned and a debt repaid. Our story begins, as so many do, with a connection that felt like kismet. His name was Leo. Leo was a whirlwind of color and sound in my world of quiet, ordered code. I am a software engineer, specializing in cybersecurity. My days are spent in the logical, predictable world of ones and zeros, of firewalls and encrypted pathways. I find a profound peace in the structure of it, a sense of control and understanding that the chaotic world of human emotion rarely affords. My life before him was a well-written script, elegant, efficient, and secure. Leo was entropy. He was a painter, an artist who saw the world not in binary, but in an infinite spectrum of hues and shades. Where I saw logic, he saw passion. Where I built walls, he painted murals on them. Our first meeting was at a small gallery opening for a mutual friend. I was standing in a corner, nursing a glass of white wine, feeling profoundly out of place amidst the loud chatter and abstract canvases. I was analyzing the gallery's public Wi-Fi security protocols in my head, a nervous habit, when a voice smooth and warm like honeyed whiskey broke through my internal monologue. "You look like you're trying to solve the universe," he said. I turned to see him. He had paint flecks on his knuckles and a smile that seemed to understand a joke the rest of the world hadn't heard yet. His eyes, a startling shade of hazel, weren't just looking at me. They seemed to be reading me, absorbing the details. "Just debugging it," I replied, a small smile touching my own lips for the first time that evening. That was the beginning. Leo swept into my life with the force of a summer storm. He taught me to see the beauty in imperfection, in the spontaneous and the unplanned. He would drag me from my desk, from the comforting glow of my monitors, to watch the sunset, insisting on describing every shade of orange and purple as if he were mixing the colors on a palette. He'd bring me to loud, chaotic concerts in dimly lit bars, and in the thrumming bass, I'd feel a different kind of rhythm, one that wasn't dictated by clock cycles and processing speeds. I in turn offered him a kind of stability. I organized his chaotic finances into neat spreadsheets. I built him a beautiful, streamlined website to showcase his portfolio, a digital gallery that was as elegant as the ones he dreamed of exhibiting in. He called me his anchor, his true north. I thought we were balancing each other out, two different elements creating a perfect, stable compound. Our love was a language we built together. It was in the way he'd leave a small, perfect sketch on my desk in the Morninga coffee cup with steam curling into a heart, or a caricature of my stern coding face. It was in the way I'd untangle the spaghetti of his charging cables and organize them with labeled Velcro ties, a small act of service that brought a look of genuine, grateful awe to his face. And in that space of perceived trust, I let him into my world. Not just the world of my hobbies and my friends, but the deeper, more vulnerable parts. The digital world is my native land, and like anyone, I had private spaces within it. We shared photos, of course. Silly selfies, pictures from trips we took to the coast, intimate moments captured in the soft light of a lazy Sunday morning. They were pixels, yes, but they were imbued with trust. They were digital representations of a promise that they were for us and us alone. I, a cybersecurity expert, ironically let my guard down. The most sophisticated firewall is useless when you willingly open the door from the inside. I believed his love was the ultimate encryption. The red flags, when I look back now, were not flags at all. They were small, almost invisible threads, woven so cleverly into the tapestry of his charm that I didn't see the pattern they were forming. There was a possessiveness that he disguised as passion. "I just miss you so much when you're with them," he'd say when I planned a night out with my own friends. It sounded sweet, romantic even. Only in retrospect do I see it for the isolation tactic it was. He had a subtle way of belittling my work, my very essence. He'd watch me code, a bemused smile on his face. I don't know how you can just stare at that gibberish all day, Alara. It's so cold. Lifeless. He'd say it with a light, teasing tone, but the subtext was clear. His world of art and emotion was superior to my world of logic and reason. He was the artist, the soul. I was the machine, the utility. He needed me, but he didn't fully respect me. The deepest fissure, the one that would eventually crack our entire foundation, was his insecurity. For all his outward charisma, Leo was deeply, profoundly insecure. He craved constant validation. His moods would swing dramatically based on the reception of his art. A single negative comment on his Instagram could send him into a spiral of despair, while a sale would make him feel like a king. He needed to be the center of attention, the most admired person in any room. And for a long time in our small world of two he was. The breakup was not a single explosive event. It was a slow, painful erosion. My career was taking off. I was offered a senior position at a major tech firm, a job that came with more responsibility, more respect, and, yes, a significant pay rise. I was thrilled. I came home with a bottle of champagne, ready to celebrate with the man I loved. I found him in his studio, staring at a blank canvas, a cloud of gloom hanging over him. He hadn't sold a painting in months. My news, which I delivered with breathless excitement, did not elicit the reaction I expected. There was no hug, no congratulations, I'm so proud of you. There was just a tight, thin smile. That's great, Alara, he said, his voice flat. More money to spend on your computer things. They're not computer things, Leo. This is my career. It's a big deal. Right. Your career, he scoffed, finally turning to look at me. The look in his eyes was not one of pride. It was one of resentment. While I'm in here, pouring my soul onto a canvas for nothing, you're getting promotions for what? Typing. The word hung in the air between us, sharp and ugly. Typing. He had condensed my entire world, the complex architecture of security systems, the intricate dance of algorithms, the years of study and dedication into that one dismissive word. It was the beginning of the end. The arguments became more frequent, his belittling more overt. He started to resent my success because it highlighted his own perceived failures. My stability, which he once called his anchor, now felt to him like a judgment. The relationship became a power struggle I didn't even know we were in. He needed to be the one who was more successful, more admired. And as my star rose, his ego couldn't bear the shadow. The final conversation happened on a rainy Tuesday night. It was quiet, devoid of the shouting that had marked our recent arguments. That made it all the more chilling. I don't think this is working anymore, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt like stones in my mouth. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly, a strange, calculating look in his eyes that I had never seen before. You think you're too good for me now, don't you? Miss Senior Cybersecurity Architect. It has nothing to do with that, Leo. It has to do with respect. You don't respect what I do. You don't respect me. Oh, I respect you, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a cold, cruel thing. I respect that you were a nice, quiet little thing I could fix. But you're not that anymore. You have your own world now. You don't need me to make it colorful. And that was it. The truth. He hadn't loved me. He had loved the idea of being my savior, my artist who could paint color into my gray, logical life. My independence was a betrayal of the role he had cast for me. He moved out the next day. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The spaces where his canvases once leaned were now just blank white walls. The air, once thick with the smell of turpentine and his cologne, was now just still and empty. For weeks I walked through the ghost of our life together, processing the grief, the confusion, and the slow dawning realization that the man I loved had never really existed. He was a beautiful facade, and I had mistaken the mural for the man. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The worst was just beginning. The discovery came on a Thursday. Thursdays are usually my favorite day of the week. It's close enough to the weekend that you can taste the freedom, but there's still enough work to do to feel productive. I was in the middle of a complex code review, my mind deep in the comforting logic of syntax and structure, when a message popped up on my screen. It was from Chloe, one of my oldest friends. "Alara, can you call me? It's important." Chloe is not one for dramatics. Her text, stripped of its usual emojis and light-hearted slang, sent a jolt of alarm through me. I excused myself from my virtual meeting, my heart starting to beat a little faster, and stepped out onto my small balcony. The city noise below felt distant, muffled. "Chloe? What's wrong?" I asked, my voice tight. Her voice on the other end was gentle, too gentle. It was the voice you used to deliver terrible news. "Alara, have you been online today? On any of the old forums? The ones from college?" A cold dread began to seep into my bones, a chilling premonition.
"No."
"Why? What's going on?" She took a deep breath. Someone posted some photos. Of you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What kind of photos?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. The dread was now a certainty, a block of ice forming in my stomach. "They're private, Alara. The ones you know. The ones you sent to Leo." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The phone felt slippery in my hand. I could hear Chloe's voice, frantic and concerned, but it was as if it was coming from a great distance. My mind was a sudden, roaring blank. The trust, the intimacy, the vulnerability I had shared with him, he had taken it and weaponized it. He had stripped me bare, not in the privacy of our once shared bedroom, but in the cold, anonymous glare of the entire world. The link she sent me burned on my phone screen. My fingers trembled as I clicked it, and there it was. A forum I hadn't visited in a decade, a relic of a past life, and a thread titled, "Check out my crazy ex-girlfriend," the professional type. And below it a gallery. My body, my face, my most private moments displayed like trophies. Underneath each photo there were comments. Vile, lewd, dehumanizing words from strangers. They were dissecting me, consuming me, laughing at me. I felt a wave of nausea so powerful I had to grip the balcony railing to keep from falling. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. It was a violation of a kind I had never imagined. It wasn't just my body he had exposed, it was my trust. He had taken the most vulnerable part of me and thrown it to the wolves for sport, all to soothe his pathetic, wounded ego. He couldn't stand that I had left him, that I was succeeding without him, so he had to find a way to tear me down, to reduce me from a successful woman to a piece of meat on the internet. The hours that followed are a blur of pure, unadulterated horror. I felt exposed, as if every person I passed on the street, every colleague in a video call, every stranger in the grocery store had seen me. I felt their eyes on me, even when they weren't looking. The safety of my own skin had been compromised. My apartment, once my sanctuary, felt like a glass box. I closed all the blinds, but I couldn't shut out the feeling of being watched. The rage came later. It wasn't a hot, explosive anger. It was a cold, quiet rage that settled deep in my bones. It was the rage of a system architect who sees a beautifully designed network breached by a crude, malicious piece of malware. He had used my love as a phishing scam, gotten my credentials, and deployed a virus into the very core of my life. I spent 2 days in a state of paralysis. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, the glow of my monitors illuminating my tear-streaked face, replaying every moment of our relationship, looking for the lines of malicious code I had missed. I saw them all now with perfect, agonizing clarity. His teasing about my job, his need for control, his fragile ego. It was all there. I had just been too blind, too in love to run a diagnostic. I reported the posts, of course. I went through the official channels. I filled out forms, sent emails, clicked buttons. Some of the photos came down, but it was like playing whack-a-mole. For every one I managed to get removed, 2 more would pop up on a different site, a different forum. The internet is a hydra, and he had taught it my name. The feeling of powerlessness was suffocating. The very systems I understood, the digital world that was my home, had been turned against me. The law was slow. The platform policies were full of loopholes. Justice felt like a distant, abstract concept. On the 3rd night, something shifted. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the lines of code for a security protocol I was designing for work. It was a complex piece of work, a digital fortress designed to protect sensitive data from intruders. And as I stared at the elegant, logical flow of the script, a thought began to form. It started as a whisper, a flicker in the darkness of my despair. He thought my world was cold and lifeless. He thought my skills were just typing. He had attacked me in my own territory, using the simplest, most brutal of weapons, exposure. He assumed I would react with only emotion, with tears and shame. He had fundamentally misunderstood who I was. He had underestimated me. He saw me as a painter's muse, not as an architect of the very world he was now using to attack me. And in that moment, the cold rage in my bones began to crystallize. It sharpened into a point, into a purpose. He wanted to use the digital world to define me? Fine. I would use it to define him. I would not fight him on his terms with anger and shouting. I would not stoop to his level of crude cruelty. No, my response would be elegant. It would be precise. It would be a piece of code so perfectly written that it would dismantle his digital existence with the quiet efficiency of a surgeon's scalpel. I would not try to erase what he had done. Erasure is a messy, imperfect business online. Instead, I would perform a replacement, a substitution. I would take the narrative he had written for me and I would overwrite it with the new one of his own making. My mind started to race, not with panic but with possibilities. The paralysis was gone, replaced by a surge of adrenaline, a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I pulled up a fresh terminal window. The blinking cursor on the black screen was like a steady heartbeat. It was time to get to work. It was time to build my weapon. And I knew exactly what the payload would be. I had the perfect key, a memory I had locked away, which I now realized was the master key to his humiliation. The key, the core of my plan, came from a memory I had long since filed away under bizarre drunken evenings. It was from about a year into our relationship. We had gone to a Halloween party at a friend's warehouse loft. The theme was childhood heroes. I had gone as Ellen Ripley from Alien, complete with the practical, no-nonsense jumpsuit. Leo, ever the contrarian, refused to wear a costume, claiming his artistic integrity was above such things. As the night wore on and the alcohol flowed, however, his artistic integrity began to dissolve. A group of us were in a side room, laughing and sharing ridiculous stories from our school days. One of our friends had a box of old costumes from her days in amateur theater. And in that box, nestled amongst pirate hats and wizard robes, was a complete, surprisingly high-quality Sailor Moon cosplay outfit. The iconic blue and white Sailor Fuku, the red bow, the white gloves, even the blonde wig with the signature Odango buns. It was presented as a joke. Someone dared Leo, the serious artist, to put it on. At first he refused, puffing out his chest with mock indignation. But a few more drinks and the coaxing of the crowd wore him down. With a dramatic sigh, he disappeared into the bathroom. He emerged a few minutes later to a roar of laughter and applause. And there he was, Leo, the charismatic painter, the man who waxed poetic about gritty realism, dressed head to toe as the champion of love and justice. He was surprisingly committed to the bit. He struck the poses, hand on his hip, V for victory sign held high. "In the name of the moon, I will punish you," he declared, his voice a deep baritone that made the line all the more absurd. It was hilarious. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated silliness. And I of course had my phone out. I took pictures. Lots of them. Close-ups of him trying to look fierce with a tiara on his forehead. Wide shots of him attempting a graceful twirl and nearly toppling over. A particularly priceless one of him looking into the camera with a drunken, soulful gaze. A single white glove held to his chest. The next morning he was mortified. "Oh my God, Alara, please tell me you deleted those," he'd groaned, nursing a hangover. "Never," I had laughed. "These are blackmail material." "Delete them," he had said, and for a second the humor was gone from his voice. There was a flash of genuine panic in his eyes. "Seriously, I have a reputation." Seeing his real fear, and because I loved him, I had relented. Okay, I'm deleting them," I'd said, tapping on my phone and showing him the empty camera roll. But I hadn't deleted them. I had simply moved them. I moved them from my phone's gallery to a secure, encrypted folder in my personal cloud storage, a digital vault I use for sensitive documents. It was a throwaway action at the time, done more out of a mischievous impulse than any real foresight. I had forgotten they even existed. Until now. Now, sitting in the blue light of my monitors, that memory returned to me not as a joke, but as a prophecy. It was perfect. It was the absolute antithesis of the hypermasculine, controlling persona he projected. It was ridiculous, emasculating, and best of all, it was entirely his own doing. I wouldn't be creating a lie. I would simply be revealing a hidden truth. And so the plan began to take shape. My objective was twofold. First, I needed to locate every single instance of my private photos online. This would require a methodical, exhaustive search, far beyond a simple Google query. Second, I needed to devise a way to replace those photos, simultaneously and on a massive scale, with the images of Sailor Leo. This was not a job for brute force. This required finesse. This was my canvas. The first phase was digital reconnaissance. For the next week, I lived online. I became a digital ghost, a silent observer in the dark corners of the internet where he had strewn pieces of my life. I didn't sleep in my bed. I catnapped in my desk chair, my fingers never far from the keyboard. My apartment became a command center. The air grew thick with the hum of electronics and the smell of reheating coffee. I wrote a suite of custom web crawling scripts. They were elegant, spider-like pieces of code, designed to scour the web for the specific digital fingerprint of the images he had leaked. They moved silently through forums, image boards, social media aggregators, and obscure blogs. They were more thorough than any human could ever be. Each time a script found a match, it would log the URL, the server's IP address, the type of content management system the site was running, and any potential security vulnerabilities it could identify. Slowly, a map began to form on my central monitor. It was a web of my own violation, a constellation of shame. Each glowing point represented a place where a piece of me was on display. I looked at it not with despair, but with cold, analytical detachment. This was not my soul, it was a dataset. And it was a dataset I was going to manipulate. As my spiders crawled the web, I turned my attention to Leo himself, the architect of this mess. To replace the images, I would need access. Hacking into dozens of disparate, unrelated websites would be noisy and impractical. I needed a more elegant solution. I needed a single point of entry. I needed the master key. I needed access to his accounts. This is where my knowledge of him became my greatest weapon. Love, it turns out, is the most effective form of social engineering. I knew his habits, his patterns, the digital breadcrumbs he left across the internet. I knew his mother's maiden name, his first pet's name, the street he grew up on, the answers to all the standard security questions. But Leo, for all his artistic sensibilities, was lazy when it came to digital security. He, like so many people, reused passwords. His entire digital life, I suspected, was secured by one or two variations of the same lazy phrase. I didn't need to brute force his password. That would be like taking a sledgehammer to a locked door. I was a locksmith. I just needed to find the right key. I started by mapping his digital footprint. His art portfolio website, his social media accounts, his email, the cloud storage he used to back up his paintings. I targeted his personal email first. It was the central hub of his digital life, the key to everything else. I went to the login page and clicked, Forgot Password. The security question popped up. What is the name of your favorite band? I smiled. It was a test. He had dozens of favorite bands, depending on his mood and who he was trying to impress. But I knew his true favorite, the one he listened to late at night in his studio when he thought no one was listening. A slightly embarrassing progressive rock band from the 80s that didn't fit his carefully curated, indie artist persona. I typed in the name. Access granted. A jolt of triumph, cold and pure, shot through me. I was in. The feeling was not one of glee, but of grim satisfaction. I had crossed a line, a legal and ethical boundary, but he had pushed me across it. He had brought the war to my doorstep, and I was using my own expertise to fight back. Inside his email, I found a digital history of his pettiness. Emails to his friends bragging about what he had done. Put her back in her place. One of them read. Confirmed everything. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated act of revenge, designed to humiliate and control me. But I wasn't there to read his mail. I was there for the keys to the kingdom. Using the password reset function, I systematically and silently gained access to his other accounts, his social media, his blog, and most importantly, the cloud storage account where he had originally uploaded my photos before spreading them. It was a treasure trove. He had kept the original high-resolution files. Arrogant. Sloppy. Now for the final piece of the puzzle. The payload. I retrieved the Sailor Moon photos from my own secure cloud. The quality was surprisingly good. I spent an entire day in Photoshop, not altering them but enhancing them. I color-corrected them, sharpened the focus, made the ridiculousness of it all crystal clear. I even added a subtle, elegant watermark to the corner of each image, his full name and a link to his professional art portfolio website. If he was going to be famous, he should be properly credited. The final stage was to write the script. This was my masterpiece. It was a Python script, a thing of beauty in its ruthless efficiency. I named it Artemis, after Sailor Moon's feline guardian and the Greek goddess of the hunt. The script had several functions. First, it would connect to his cloud storage account. Second, it would delete every single one of my private photos. A complete permanent digital wipe. Third, it would upload the entire meticulously curated album of Sailor Leo in their place. Fourth, and this was the most crucial part, the script would then log into every forum and image board account he had used to post my photos, accounts I now had the credentials for thanks to his email. It would find his posts and using the edit function, it would systematically replace every embedded image of me with the random image from the Sailor Leo album. The text, his vile captions would remain. The context would be gloriously, absurdly altered. To add a final elegant twist, I built in a recursive element. The script would leave a backdoor for me on his cloud account. If he tried to delete the Sailor Leo photos, the script, running on a remote server I controlled, would detect the change and immediately re-upload the entire album. It would also post a new photo to one of his social media accounts every time he tried. He would be trapped in a digital prison of his own making. He could check out any time he liked, but he could never leave. The script was complete. The map of his digital filth was on one screen. The Artemis script was on another. The album of Sailor Leo was on a third. My finger hovered over the enter key. My heart was pounding, a heavy rhythmic drum in the quiet of my apartment. This was the point of no return. I took a deep breath, not of anger but of calm resolve. This was not for him. This was for me. This was the act of taking the pen back and writing my own ending to his ugly chapter. I pressed enter. The moment I executed the script was paradoxically silent. There was no explosion, no dramatic sound effect. There was only the quiet whir of my computer's fans and the rapid scroll of text in the terminal window, a waterfall of confirmation messages. Each one a small victory. Deleting file. Under 734 JP. Success. Uploading file. Sailor JP. Success.
Accessing forum-bcgz.
Login successful. Editing post ID. 98173. Replacing embedded image. Success. Line after line, the script did its work with an inhuman speed and precision that I found deeply, profoundly satisfying. It was a digital cleansing. It was the tide coming in and washing away the filth he had scrawled on the sand, leaving behind something new, something absurd, something entirely of his own creation. I sat there for nearly an hour, watching the logs, my body thrumming with a strange mixture of adrenaline and serenity. I had a second script running, a monitoring tool that showed me the targeted web pages in real time. I watched as one by one my face, my body vanished from these sordid corners of the internet. In their place, Leo blossomed. There he was in a thread titled, "Check out my crazy ex-girlfriend," striking a fierce pose in a sailor fuku, his face a mask of drunken determination. The vile comments below the picture were suddenly transformed into masterpieces of unintentional comedy. "Wow, she has some muscular arms," one comment read. "Not my type, but I respect the confidence," said another. The narrative had been irrevocably altered. He was no longer the triumphant conqueror showing off his prize. He was the subject of ridicule, a man whose attempt at malice had backfired in the most spectacular way. He hadn't just been disarmed. He had been forced to star in his own private circus. I closed the terminal windows, leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in over a week, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to release. A slow, deep exhaustion settled over me, but it was a good exhaustion. The exhaustion of a battle fought and won. I went to my bedroom, pulled the curtains open to let in the pre-dawn light, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I awoke hours later to the frantic buzzing of my phone. It was a cascade of notifications. Missed calls from Leo. Dozens of them. Then came the text. First they were confused. What the hell is going on? My accounts are acting weird. Did you do something to my cloud storage? Then, the confusion gave way to dawning horror as he clearly began to see the extent of what had happened. Ilara, what the fuck did you do? Those photos. Where did you get those photos? Delete them. Delete them now. The text grew more and more desperate. A frantic, typo-riddled stream of panic. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. You hacked me. The irony was so thick I could taste it. He, who had committed a textbook act of revenge porn, was now threatening to call the police on me for hacking. I read his panicked messages not with triumph, but with a kind of detached pity. He was a cornered animal, lashing out in fear. I didn't respond. My silence was a more powerful statement than any words I could have written. The power dynamic had been completely and utterly inverted. He had tried to make me feel powerless, exposed, and ashamed. Now he was the one frantically trying to cover himself, to hide, to delete his own digital ghost. I made myself a cup of tea and watched the fallout online. It was faster and more explosive than I could have ever anticipated. The internet, which had been a tool of my humiliation, now became the engine of his. The absurdity of Sailor Leo was pure meme fodder. Someone took the image of him with the link to his art portfolio and posted it on a popular art subreddit with the title, "This artist's new direction is bold." It went viral. His portfolio website, which I had so carefully designed for him, was flooded with traffic. But no one was looking at his gloomy, pretentious paintings of desolate landscapes. They were there for Sailor Leo. The comments section on his blog became a sea of moon emojis and quotes from the anime. His professional Instagram was inundated with people asking when his next performance art piece would be. He tried to fight it, of course. I could see the digital footprints of his panic. He'd delete a post on his Facebook, and my Artemis script, ever vigilant, would immediately post 2 more photos in its place. He took his portfolio website offline, but the Streisand effect was already in full force. People had screenshotted everything. Sailor Leo was now part of the permanent collection of internet culture. His friends, the ones who had cheered on his vile act, either went silent or began to publicly distance themselves from him. His attempt to look like a strong, dominant man in front of them had resulted in him becoming a laughingstock. Late that evening, he showed up at my apartment. I saw him on the lobby security camera feed. He was buzzing my apartment relentlessly. I didn't answer. I just watched his frantic, desperate face on the screen. He looked smaller, diminished. The charming, confident artist was gone. In his place was just a desperate man, undone by his own reflection. Eventually, he slumped against the wall, defeated, and then walked away into the night. I never saw him in person again. The weeks that followed were a process of healing. The online furor eventually died down, as all things on the internet do. It became old news, a forgotten meme. But the effects were permanent. Leo's budding art career was effectively over, not because I had destroyed it, but because his reputation was now inextricably linked with his own act of foolishness. He had tried to brand me as a crazy ex, and in the end he had branded himself as a joke. For me, the healing was quieter. The act of revenge was not a magic cure. The memory of the violation didn't just disappear. The scar is still there, but it no longer hurts to the touch. It's a reminder of a weakness, a vulnerability, but also of a strength I didn't know I possessed. I didn't do it to destroy him. I have come to realize that my actions were not about destruction, but about reclamation. He tried to take my story and twist it into something ugly and demeaning. All I did was take the pen back and write a different ending. An ending where the villain wasn't a monster, but a clown. An ending where my cold, lifeless skills were the very things that saved my dignity. My world of code and logic, which he had so casually dismissed, became my sanctuary and my weapon. It gave me the tools to not just defend myself, but to reclaim my power in a way that was uniquely mine. I didn't need to scream or cry or plead. I just needed to write a better script. The internet is neither good nor evil. It is a tool. It can be a weapon of violation, or it can be a means of justice. It can be used to expose and shame, or it can be used to reflect a person's own ugliness back at them with perfect, crystalline clarity. He chose his weapon. I simply chose mine. And mine in the end was more elegant. And so the story ends. Not with a bang, but with a quiet sense of equilibrium. The scales have been balanced. The code has been debugged. The system is for now secure. We all have parts of our lives we share in confidence, digital or otherwise, believing them to be safe. We build our trust in people like we build our homes, hoping the walls are strong enough. But what happens when the person you gave the keys to decides to burn it all down? How do you rebuild? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to take back your own narrative from someone who tried to steal it? Thank you for listening to her revenge arc. If this story resonated with you, please consider leaving a like, sharing it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribing for more stories of justice reclaimed. Until next time, be safe and be the architect of your own story.